Hi grade 7s, as you can see I'm here with Whitney's Kiss and today we'll be looking at chapter 8. Whitney stayed home until after the funeral, which was on a Friday. She cried so much that she thought she would run out of tears, but they kept coming. Her father's death ripped a huge, gaping hole in her young life, and it brought her face to face with the terrible world of AIDS. She'd seen her father wilt away before her eyes. She had watched him suffer from fevers, infections, and sores that would not go away. She had witnessed him become thin and weak and old, and it all seemed to happen so quickly. She had hoped with her mother that the medicines would work, that the doctors would somehow be able to cure him. They had hoped in vain. In the end, it was pneumonia that actually killed him. His system had become so weak that he had no resistance to it. There really was nothing the doctors could have done. Whitney never knew that AIDS could cause so much suffering. She had heard stories and rumors, but they were always far from home. She had seen funerals in the township, and she'd occasionally heard on the grapevine that yet another person had died of AIDS. But she'd never experienced the tragic horror of this disease firsthand like this, within her own family, her own father. He was a good man who did not deserve to die, much less die of AIDS. Whitney had never felt so much pain on the inside, the pain of watching her father suffer so unjustly, and now the pain of losing him. Even when Makulu died, she did not feel this kind of agony in her soul. Perhaps it was because she was younger then, or perhaps it was the way in which her father had been taken from her. Memories of him came to her in dreams at night and in sudden flashes during the day. They were mostly positive memories of the days before he'd become ill. Even so, they were painful memories, because she knew that she would never be with him again, never talk and laugh with him again, never experience any of those things again. And now she only had memories of it. It was a pain she could not explain to anybody. And when she returned to school on Monday, a shock awaited her that would bring even more pain. The first thing Whitney noticed was that Lindiwe was not waiting for her at the school's gate as usual. She wondered whether her friend was absent that day. Then, on her way to the square, she saw Lindiwe sitting with two of her other friends, Rosie and Sibongile. She went over to them. "Molweni," Whitney said. "Oh." "Hi, Whitney," Lindiwe said coldly. The others said nothing. "What's up?" said Whitney. It seemed strange to receive such an unfriendly welcome after all that had happened and having been away from school for almost a week. "You can sit here, but not too close to us," Rosie said. "What? Why not? What's gotten into you guys?" Whitney asked in astonishment. "We know about your father," Sibongile said flatly. "He died of AIDS, not cancer." "What? That's bull. He did not," Whitney shot back. A wave of emotion welled up within her. "Yes, he did. You've been lying to us, Whitney. You're supposed to be my friend, but you lied to me," Lindiwe said. Whitney was stunned. Her mouth hung open, but she could not think of what to say. "And we think you lied because you probably have AIDS too," Rosie said. "So we'd better stay away from you." Whitney burst into tears. "No, that's not true. Who told you this nonsense?" "Don't keep lying to us. We know it's true," said Lindiwe. Whitney realized that she could no longer hide the truth. "It's not true that I have AIDS. And so what if my father had AIDS? It wasn't his fault," she began to explain sobbingly, but her friends were not listening. "See, I told you he died of AIDS. You heard it from her own mouth," Lindiwe said to her friends. The three of them got up and started walking away. "And I do not have AIDS," Whitney sobbed. But they ignored her. and walked off. "Just don't come near us," Sibongile called over her shoulder. Whitney was devastated. She moved off to a corner and cried into her hands. How could they do this? How could her own friends treat her like this? Like she was some kind of outcast. There was no sympathy, no support, no compassion from them. And these were her friends. Whitney cried until the bell rang. She soon found out that her whole class had somehow found out about her father's AIDS. And most of the rest of the school had too. Wherever she went, people avoided contact with her. She got strange and ugly looks from people. Some made nasty comments. When she walked into the girls' bathroom, a few other girls who were inside hastily walked out. They said they didn't want to use the same toilet as her. During history, her first class of the day, she sat alone at her desk. The girl who usually sat next to her had moved to another desk, far away from Whitney. The history teacher normally did not allow kids to swap seats or move to another desk, but this morning she had said nothing about it. Whitney desperately wanted to talk to her friends. She wanted to convince them that she didn't have AIDS. She cornered Lindiwe after history. "Lindiwe, how can you do this to me?" she asked, trying to hold back her tears. "No, Whitney, I should ask you that. How could you lie to me? How could you tell everybody that your father had cancer?" "Because I was told to," Whitney's eyes pleaded with her friend. "That's nonsense," Lindiwe snapped. "I swear it's true," Whitney replied. "My mother made me promise that I would say he had cancer." Why would she do that? "Because she was afraid of this," Whitney said. "What do you mean afraid of this?" "Afraid that people would reject us, that everyone would think we also have AIDS," she explained. "Well, that is very possible. How would we know if you have AIDS or not? It's contagious, you know." "Better safe than sorry," Lindiwe said, leaning away from Whitney. "That's mean. You can't get AIDS from being close to somebody." "You see, you do have AIDS. You just admitted it," Lindiwe said. "I'm staying away from you." "I did not admit that I have AIDS. I meant that I could never get it from being close to my father." Whitney was near tears with frustration. "Well, then I don't understand why you would lie about it," her friend said. "I'm sorry I lied to you, Lindiwe. I had no choice. Please don't be like this," Whitney begged. "You always have a choice," Lindiwe answered, "and the truth is always the best choice." She turned and walked off. Lindiwe's words made Whitney feel guilty. Maybe she should have just told everyone the truth from the start. Didn't Mrs. Pillay also push her to do that? It was wrong to hide the truth from everyone, she had said. But one question had bothered Whitney the whole morning. How did everyone find out about her father's AIDS? Who had told them? She was certain she had only told Lucky and Mrs. Pillay, and neither of them would have said anything. Or would they? Lucky wouldn't. He swore on his grandmother's grave, and he was so in love with her, he would never tell. He knew the truth and never rejected her for it. Besides, he wasn't even in her school. That left Mrs. Pillay. Would she have said anything? Maybe Lindiwe came to her for a heart-to-heart chat and Mrs. Pillay thought it best to tell her the truth. Whitney did not want to believe it. But Mrs. Pillay had been trying to persuade her to tell everyone the truth. She kept on trying to convince her that the truth would eventually come out, that honesty was so important, that she wouldn't lose her friends if she told the truth. Was she the one who told? Whitney never asked her not to say anything, she remembered now. It had to be Mrs. Pillay, Whitney eventually concluded. It could not be Lucky. He would never risk losing her by breaking his promise. It could only be Mrs. Pillay. She'd made no promise to keep it a secret. Yes, without a doubt, It was her favorite teacher who had got her into this mess. She probably thought it better to tell everyone, thinking they would feel sorry for her. Stupid old woman. Darn, how could she do that? All of a sudden, Whitney was angry. Mrs. Pillay was no longer her favorite teacher. She couldn't believe she had trusted her. If only she knew the kind of problems Whitney now faced at school. She'd become an outcast, a diseased outsider that nobody wanted near them. She had lost her friends. Everyone resented her, and what hurt her the most were the despicable comments she heard from other children about her father, all because her teacher thought it best to tell everyone the truth. A feeling of resentment rose up within Whitney. She felt so cross. What did the old woman know anyway? She should never have listened to her. She should never have been so open with her teacher, Whitney thought. By that afternoon, Whitney had made up her mind. She would go and visit Lucky. He was the only one who had not turned against her. Forget all of Mrs. Pillay's nonsense about not kissing, not touching, not being alone together, she thought. What did she know about being in love anyway? And what did she know about AIDS? Lucky was the only one who could give her what she really wanted, love and acceptance. He was the only one who understood her and who could comfort her. He made her feel alive. Yes, she would go to him. It was time she started acting like an adult. By this time tomorrow, she would be in her boyfriend's arms and she would forget all this pain and rejection, Whitney thought. She saw him the next morning on her way to school and asked him to wait for her after school. He seemed a little surprised and very happy that she did want to visit him after all. He blew her a kiss as she walked on, and she spent the morning dreaming about being with him. She remembered how soft and warm his lips were, and when she closed her eyes, she could pretend he was right there. She even remembered the scent of his deodorant. Or was it aftershave? She wondered whether Lucky shaved already. The daydreaming kept Whitney's mind off the ongoing rejection she endured at school. Her friends continued to avoid her, and she had nobody to sit with during break time. She tried to talk to some of her other friends, but it was clear that she had become a person who was not welcome. One girl explained that it was not cool to be seen with Whitney. Anyone who spent too much time close to her would risk being rejected as well. Whitney knew that HIV was greatly feared. It was the mystery virus that nobody understood. It seemed to be a messenger of death with a life of its own. Somehow it could sneak up on you, jump on you, infect you secretly and without warning. Many people believe that it came on you as a punishment for something you had done wrong. Such nonsense. If only she could convince them otherwise, Whitney thought. If only she could persuade her friends that they had nothing to fear from being close to her. She'd never realized how strong fear was. The fear of death. It was strong enough to turn best friends against each other and separate them. Whitney considered going to Mrs. Pillay's class during break time, but she decided against it. She'd lost trust in her teacher. She'd said too much and caused too much trouble for Whitney. And she would probably preach to her about Lucky again. No, she would stay away from Mrs. Pillay from now on. Her mind turned to Lucky again. She couldn't wait to be with him again. She craved to be wanted by somebody, to be accepted as a normal person. This afternoon, we will finally be together, Whitney thought. Right, that brings us to the end of chapter 8. Have a look out for chapter 9.